These are stories read by visualbrony, who is on his 5-year mission to find amazing stories, discover strange crossovers, and read tales that no one has read before. The Twilight Enigma by iisaw. Chapter 25. The Beginning, in which Princess Twilight Sparkle takes care of a few loose ends. May 12th to 14th, 1015. Multiversal Nexus Prime and Pony Joe's Donut Emporium, Canterlot, Equestria. Are you certain about this, Twilight? Celestia asked as I prepared to trigger the warding spells around our universe. I nodded as I mentally rechecked my math.
Yes, the reflexive feedback will pour more power into the barriers as more force is applied. Enough raw magical strength could overwhelm them, but if we're faced with an invader capable of that...
I shrugged.
We'll have to hope we're more clever than they are.
Celestia smiled slightly.
No, I am confident that your constructs will operate as you've designed them. I meant, are you certain about locking us away from everywhere else? By your accounts, there are wondrous things in the worlds beyond. There are also terrible things out there, I replied. And some of them are me.
Celestia and Luna exchanged glances, but said nothing.
I think the 3 Elecon lock will suffice,
I continued.
It won't be detectable from outside, but it will give us a way to open a lateral portal whenever we wish. Whenever 3 of us agree to do so anyway.
No other last-minute changes, Luna said with a gentle, teasing smile. I grinned right back at her.
We've repaired and reinforced all the secondary systems, and the Harmony Matrix is reset and adjusted for broader operating parameters. Yep, I think that about covers it. Believe it or not, my desire to meddle in the basic structure of the universe has pretty much been satisfied.
That as well, for there are many concerns to be addressed on a secondary level, she replied, lifting an eyebrow. The folk of Twilight Town have petitioned the Equestrian Crown for return of their, and I quote, dark goddess. I groaned. Yes, Celestia said. I'm afraid those fine ponies will be clamoring for the most inappropriate sort of leader for years to come, Twilight Sparkle. You have set their expectations of government quite high.
Maybe we can ship Chrysalis out there?
I suggested, only half kidding.
Fee!
Luna gave a snort of derision.
The Bug Queen is not half the villainous thou art. Gee, thanks,
I muttered, giving her a swat on the shoulder with my wingtip. In all seriousness, Twilight, Celestia said. Despite the fact that ponies now think that the undiscovered West was always there and remained unexplored only because no pony ever bothered, the appearance of a huge piece of new territory will probably require a lot of hoofs on attention.
That was quite a clever bit of spell construction, by the way,
I told her.
Was all that work really just to provide a refuge from discord?
Yes. And it would have been much more clever if I had exempted myself from the spell, Celestia replied with a grin and a dismissive shake of her head.
No,
I said, not smiling back.
It was to ensure that Discord could never get the secret from you, wasn't it? You might have become trapped forever in his madhouse, but you still gave your subjects the possibility of escape.
Celestia cleared her throat and nervously shifted her forehoofs. I don't recall. Memory spells are like that. I didn't reply for a moment. The sight of an embarrassed Celestia was something to be treasured.
Okay,
I said, finally allowing myself to smile.
Let's go with that.
Chrysalis poked disdainfully at the eclair on the plate in front of her.
Is this some sort of joke, Sparkle?
She was wearing her public alicorn body and completely overdressed for a meeting in the back room of a student hangout.
Not at all,
I reassured her.
Princess Celestia offered me the use of a room in the palace, but I wanted this get-together to be more cozy and informal.
Prince Blueblood didn't even deign to glance down at the selection of pastries on the table. An informal meeting hardly necessitates rubbing shoulders with a geometrous rabble, Princess. I'd take it as a great favor if we could conclude our business as quickly as possible.
Certainly,
I said in a cheerful tone.
You know that I've been away for quite a while.
And yet here you are. Again.
Chrysalis said, sounding distinctly disappointed.
Yes, and I thought you two might like to look at some of the pictures I took while I was traveling.
My smile was quite genuine, though for different reasons than my words suggested. I levitated a photo book out of my saddlebags and placed it on the table in front of them.
Your sense of humor, if I can call it that, completely mystifies me, Twilight.
Chrysalis said, making no move to open the book.
Still not joking,
I said and took a bite of my apple fritter. It was perfectly sweet, slightly crunchy on the outside and steamy, warm and soft on the inside. Joe was a genius. He could have been working for any of the noble families as a pastry chef, making 10 times what he earned from his shop. Chrysalis exchanged glances with Blueblood. I took a deliberately slow sip of my coffee, savoring the light hazelnut flavor. Nothing but the best for Joe's customers. I tried to hire him away once, but he told me that he loves the bustle of Canterlot and variety of ponies and other things he sees on a daily basis and would miss it too much. Chrysalis sighed and flipped open the book. When she gasped, Blueblood turned his attention to the photos. What is this? This foulness? He growled at me, rising to his hoofs in anger. Some pathetic attempt to insult my wife? Celestia will hear of this unfathomable rudeness, Princess Twilight.
Sit down, Prince,
I said. When he didn't, I quickly added,
I'm not asking.
His mouth and eyebrows twitched for a long moment as he mentally ran over his options. Then he sat back down. I trust you have an explanation for this. While her husband was making his show of outrage, Chrysalis had used her magic on the book of photos.
These are real as far as I can tell,
she said to him.
Very real,
I added.
And yes, I will tell you what those are all about, but it's a bit involved, so I recommend enjoying your coffee and donuts while I explain.
Prince Blueblood didn't quite lean away from the table and across his forelegs, but his disdain was clear.
No, your loss.
I took another bite of my delicious fritter and launched into my story.
You remember that little book on politics I published a few years ago? Well, you'll be happy to know that I've realized that I was dead wrong about all those reforms. Even if ponies were willing to give them a try, they wouldn't have worked in the long run, and that's because I based my work on an abstract principle. Celestia's been ruling for over a millennium, and I thought I could fix her system.
I shook my head and gave them a sheepish grin.
Maybe in a few centuries I'll be qualified to suggest some minor changes.
Blueblood's expression softened, but remained a bit puzzled.
Experience is what it's all about. I recently had the chance to run the government of well, I suppose it was technically a principality, but it was more of a fiefdom. Anyway, I didn't follow my carefully worked out principles at all. I had my own selfish agenda, and simply did whatever was necessary in the moment to ensure that my subjects were content and protected. I let them form their own society and laws however they wanted. I just stomped out problems when they came up and pretty much ignored the place otherwise.
How nice of you,
Chrysalis said.
That's my point,
I said, leaning forward for emphasis. It was nice, and it worked really well, even though any outside observer would have concluded that I was a terrible ruler. My ponies were happy and safe.
What has that to do with this?
Chrysalis tapped the photo book with a perfectly manicured hoof.
I'm getting to that,
I said, popping the last of my fritter into my mouth.
So, that experience convinced me that letting ponies find their own way while being protected from exceptional threats is the best way to rule. Micromanagement by enforcing broad conceptual legislation doesn't make any pony happy.
I took a sip of my coffee and rushed on, hoping to get my point across before my audience's eyes completely glazed over.
And that's what I really want, for ponies to be happy as they can be anyway. And that includes me. All I have to do is defend them when they're in trouble, when they're threatened.
Ah, I see,
Chrysalis said.
All that was a pointlessly long-winded way of telling me that you consider me a threat. I suppose these photos of Canterlot's streets littered with the husks of dead changelings are supposed to intimidate me into renouncing my evil plans?
I shook my head sadly.
No, Chrysalis, those dead changelings are your plans. They're the result of a long campaign that you ultimately win.
You're mad,
she said flatly. I sighed and drank the last of my coffee.
There are other worlds besides ours. You know the theory and possibly where some of the portals are, I suppose. If you don't, you should fire your spies. Those worlds that run alongside ours are often nearly identical except for a few changes. And most importantly, time often runs at different rates in them.
Chrysalis glanced down at the photos.
Then these were taken in one of those worlds?
Yes, an alternate Equestria a few decades in our future. You outmaneuvered me there. You won.
Blueblood cleared his throat and said, I have no idea what you are talking about. This makes no sense. Chrysalis and I ignored him.
This doesn't look like winning to me,
she said, her eyes going green and her pupils narrowing to vertical slits.
All of Equestria was your feast table,
I said.
New hives everywhere, building unconquerable armies of drones. Hungry drones. Zebrica and Saddle Arabia fall, then lands beyond until...
Chrysalis held up a hoof to stop me. She looked down at the photos again and then slowly and deliberately closed the book.
Starvation.
Extinction, as well as the death of any life capable of feeling the smallest bit of affection,
I told her.
No need to hammer it home, Sparkle.
I can't let that happen here.
Yes, yes.
She held up her hoof again.
I understand.
I don't think you do,
I said, shaking my head.
I've decided that my purpose in life is to make sure that ponies are happy and safe by ending problems. You can choose to be happy and safe too.
I paused and looked directly into her eyes.
Or you can choose to be a problem.
Blueblood had finally heard something he clearly understood. How dare you threaten my wife?
Please forgive me,
I said to him in a calm and reasonable tone of voice.
I did not mean it as a threat. It was a warning, a final warning to both of you.
He sputtered in outrage and grew red in the face. I had no interest in sitting through an aggravated tirade, so it was time to play the game by the rules that had been bred in his bones. I drew myself up to my full height and looked down at him.
We thank you for your attendance, Prince Blueblood Polaris. You have our leave to depart our royal presence.
1. As polite as this may sound, it is understood by any experienced courtier to mean, get out of my sight before I do something that you will sorely regret. Ah, yes, convenient court protocol. By reminding him that he did not quite stand at the pinnacle of equestrian royalty, I had undercut him completely. He swallowed his pride, bowed gracefully, backed away the requisite 3 steps, turned and departed.
Performed in the back room of a donut shop, the ritual was more than a little ridiculous.
Am I also dismissed, Your Majesty?
Chrysalis sneered.
I've seen many worlds where changelings live alongside ponies in peace and cooperation,
I said, dropping the royal facade.
Make this world one of them.
She gave a demure snort and rose to depart.
Please, Princess Chrysalis.
2.
Be happy and safe.
2. Yes, she was entitled by marriage to blue blood, but it meant in a very different sense, and I'm sure she knew it. Without changing her nature, she could be a true princess of Equestria or an alien queen, but not both. Chrysalis gave me one last look over her shoulder before she left the room. She didn't say anything, but her horn glowed briefly and the book of photographs crumbled into ash. After she was gone, I got a sudden strong whiff of buttered popcorn.
I think that went well, don't you?
Discord said from behind me. I didn't even twitch.
I don't know, they didn't seem eager to stay for the party,
I said out of the corner of my mouth.
Oh, that's right.
Discord said.
The gang should arrive any time now.
He held out his lion arm and turned it over so that the wrist was facing me. A full-sized grandfather clock was strapped to it, each number on the clock face replaced with the word party. The hands, all 7 of them, whirled and twitched like snakes undergoing seizures. I couldn't help myself. I laughed.
How accurate is that thing? Do I have time for another hazelnut latte before the mindless revelry?
The little doors above the clock face snapped open and a tiny Discord popped out with a
cuckoo!
He wore a beret and a pencil-thin black mustache and held out a steaming cup to me.
Voila! Madame's Café Latte!
He said in an over-the-top Canterlot accent. I took a sip without pausing to sniff it or anything. Surprisingly, it wasn't trout-flavored.
Great coffee, thanks.
I live to serve,
Discord said, still using the egregious accent and executing an elaborate bow that seemed to require more than the normal 3 spatial dimensions. I chuckled and took another sip of my drink.
No, you don't. You live to put sticks in the spokes of ponies' lives. You were literally made to mess with us.
Maybe I've reformed. Again.
He reverted to his default form and then a glowing halo appeared over his head and his eyes.
Don't do that,
I said, sticking my tongue out in a show of revulsion.
They look like oily bowling balls.
He popped the oily bowling balls out of his eye sockets and set them down on the table, shrugging.
Fluttershy loves it when I do the gigantic puppy eyes thing.
I snorted.
Fluttershy loves you. That's why she tolerates your antics.
I had taken another couple of sips from my coffee before I realized that Discord hadn't replied. I looked up to discover him studying me carefully.
What?
I asked.
She'll take it, won't she?
He asked, nervously tapping his eagle claws on the tabletop.
Your offer of immortality, I mean. She won't.
It's her choice,
I said.
But yes, I think she will. There will always be stray critters,
3,
that need her help, and she won't willingly abandon them.
3. E.g., cats, dogs, bears, weasels, airships, draconici, and the like.
Yes,
Discord said, brightening.
Of course she will.
He cleared his throat and dug deep into one ear, pulling out a live fish.
Sardine for your coffee?
That was more like it.
Maybe later.
He shrugged, put the fish back into his ear, and cupped his lion paw around the other one.
I think I hear the first guests arriving.
Sure enough, I heard Joe's gruff voice saying, "Nice to meet you again, Sunny Skies. The party's down the hall in the back room. I peeked out the door and saw a white Pegasus with a soft pink mane and tail and a slate grey unicorn approaching.
Sunny skies? Really, sister? Does that deceive any pony?
The unicorn said.
I have successfully used disguise before, Luna.
The Pegasus replied.
You yourself are looking very nocturnal. Black is a very rare mane color for a mare. I am merely following your sterling example, sister. I am certain that Moony Moonface will serve as a suitable name should any pony ask. Please tell me you'll be teleporting back to the palace. Hello, girls,
I said, grinning. Luna shook off her disguise and swept me up in the hug with both wings.
Have you convinced the Bug Queen to forego her evil ways, my dear? It's hard to tell, but I think, it's hard to think when you're nibbling on my ear like that.
Is it hot in here or is it just me?
Discord said, sweating heavily and fanning himself with a folding lace fan. Luna sighed and let me escape her embrace.
I think there's a very good chance I've convinced her. There are 3 clear signs of a negative reaction, and I'll be watching for them very closely in the coming months.
I grinned.
The advantage of foreknowledge.
Celestia, still wearing her disguise, picked up a donut and took a dainty bite. Are you sure you want to take up this responsibility, Twilight?
Absolutely,
I said, turning to face her.
I've seen where my organizational instincts can lead me when I apply them too broadly, and it's never to a happy place. I'm a good problem solver, so I'm going to stick with that. I'm going to take care of the little problems that crop up from day to day, and when the big problems show up...
I stomped my hoofs hard on the floor. Luna smiled. I smiled back at her.
The way things usually go, I ought to have plenty of time for personal adventures and selenologic research.
4. Look it up.
No!
Came Pinkie Pie's bubbly voice from outside the door.
That's lollygagging! You are dilly-dallying! Whatever you say, Pinkie,
Rainbow Dash answered her. I could almost hear the eye roll.
Brace yourselves,
I told every pony in the room. Sure enough, Pinkie Pie came through the door cannon first. Things livened up considerably after that. The party was a whirl of conversations, games, and magical engineering, 5, but the room was too crowded for dancing. 5. Moondancer and Starlight Glimmer took over a corner table and scribbled furiously on napkins for well over an hour at one point. I only had time for a glance at their notes, but the transport-adapted related dimensional isochronic system looked promising.
Well, that's new,
Cat whispered in my ear. It was a little before midnight when the two of us returned to the room after a brief stroll outside to chat and exchange intelligence reports with an agent of Queen Cherie. My mind was only half on her comment. Across the room, Luna and Minuet were laughing and talking and standing very close to one another.
Jealousy,
Cat said.
I've never felt that from you before.
I snorted.
What? Me? Jealous? That's ridiculous. Oh, it's just a little bit, but it's there.
The cheeky bug actually smirked at me.
Would you like a big strapping stallion for a little tete-a-tete of your own? See how long it takes Princess Luna to come trotting over?
I sputtered a bit before I realized Cat was teasing me. I cleared my throat and replied with as much dignity as possible.
I do not play games of that sort.
She regarded me slyly for a moment.
Well, maybe not. But if I can give you just a tiny bit of advice, I think Luna would be very pleased if you went and interrupted her conversation. What? You mean she...
I turned to Cat, but she was being dragged away by Pinkie Pie for a game of Mirror Mare.
Luna did seem glad when I crossed the room and practically shoved my head between her and Minuet, and neither mare commented on my close approach to rudeness. I made sure I was never separated from her for long after that, and always gave her a touch as I went by, whether it was a hip bump, a brush of my tail, or a quick peck on the cheek. It seemed to make her happy. 6. 6. Late that night, there was an unexpected, violent thunderstorm over Canterlot. Rarity dragged me aside at one point with a worried, furtive look, and I popped a little privacy bubble over us.
What is it?
I hate to ask this of you, Twilight, she said, biting at her lower lip. It's a rather large favor.
Let's see. 1, 2, 3, probably 4.
I took a second to enjoy the confused look on her face.
In case you're wondering, I'm counting the times you've saved my life. So, yeah, don't hesitate to ask.
She let her breath out in a not quite sigh.
Oh, darling, that's just something we do for each other.
I couldn't help smiling.
You're a treasure, Rarity.
She cleared her throat.
Yes, well, you see, this is about me becoming royalty, so it's a delicate matter.
I was shocked. I'd offered the improved gem-based immortality to each of my friends. Rarity had immediately accepted, as I expected she would. But for her to ask for her lost alicornhood back was something that completely surprised me.
I would have to ask Celestia and Luna about it.
I stalled.
It'll be tricky to pull off, and it might upset the balance of things. Oh, yes, I know it would cause trouble, and that's why I hesitated to ask, but dear Xashir is quite smitten and he's so traditional. He's uncomfortable with an affaire de coeur and insists on making me a sultana, but that means I'll be foreign royalty, and all my business here in Equestria. Wait!
I held up my hoofs while I tried to shift my mental gears.
What? Who's Xashir?
Rarity blinked.
Oh, that's right. You may not have heard. That's perfectly understandable, darling. You've been away and busy with other concerns since your return. Enlighten me, please. Xashir's the new Sultan of Mozambique. You know him, darling. He was the captain of the elite guard. The zebra you stabbed?
I gaped at her.
Oh, piffle.
She waved a hoof dismissively.
It was only a shallow cut on the cheek. It gave him a very dashing scar, I might add. But wasn't he the 7th or 8th son? How did he get to be Sultan?
Rarity cleared her throat and averted her gaze.
Zebrakan succession can be very messy affairs. After Zeta abdicated, Xahir kept to his duty, making sure the city was safe and peaceful while his brothers debated the matter among themselves. When the last two of them managed to finish each other off simultaneously, Xahir was the only heir left. And you too? I remained in Mozambique after you departed to aid in cleaning up. When Xahir learned I was Silver Mask, well, I think he was more impressed by that than by my wings. We got to be very good friends. And you...
She smiled.
Sultana Rarity has such a wonderful ring to it, doesn't it?
I closed my gaping mouth and grinned.
You know something? It really does. Congratulations! Thank you, darling.
After we shared a hug, I asked,
But what do you need from me, besides a wedding present, I mean?
Rarity chuckled and then became serious again.
It's the legalities involved. It's all such a tangle, dear. I couldn't begin to describe it. I was hoping you could issue an edict or something that would make me a dual citizen. Otherwise I'm a...
She tapped her lip with a hoof, recalling the exact phrase, no doubt.
A foreign entity. I'd have to pay international tariffs on fabrics that I shipped from Canterlot to Manhattan, for God's sake. And that isn't the worst of it. It's also ridiculous. Don't worry, in a kingdom where changelings can go from invaders to protected species to citizens, anything is possible.
I'll have a word with the Minister of State.
Oh, thank you so much, darling. She threw herself around my neck for another hug.
I won't have to cross the ocean every time I want to visit you, will I?
Heavens, no. I shall be back and forth all the time. I have my business to attend to, and as wonderful as the here is, he could stand to become a little more cosmopolitan. So I'm certain you'll see a lot of him as well. He's commissioning a private airship for us so that we can flit about as the whim takes us. I thought for a second and then raised my eyebrows and put on as innocent a face I could manage.
But won't you be concerned about pirates?
I asked.
No,
Rarity said, and a grin that was entirely too wicked for such a beautiful mare spread across her face.
No, I won't be worried at all. I have this pesky attachment to technical accuracy, transparency, and honesty,
I explained to Applejack.
So, you see, I'm completely unsuited for government.
Sounds about right. You ain't got such a terrific track record when it comes to you making decisions for other ponies neither,
she said with a fond smile, but it still stung. I sunk my tankard of cider down on the table and hung my head.
I'm so sorry about that, AJ. I've got 1,000 excuses for what I did to you, but I know it was still me.
She held up a hoof.
No, it's okay, Twa. It's fixed now and you done apologized about 100 times already. I just hope you've learned your lesson.
Oh, believe me, I have.
I really didn't want to stay on the sensitive topic, but Applejack hadn't yet given me an answer.
Have you given any thought to...
Yep.
She nodded.
I ain't interested in hanging around for who knows how long. I aim to have a parcel of foals in, then get planted under a nice golden delicious sapling to make room for 'em all.
I'll miss you,
I said quietly.
Ain't gonna happen for a donkey's years, so let's go not burying trouble tonight, Sugarcoop.
You're a smart pony, Applejack.
Shucks.
She pushed her hat brim up and grinned at me.
Coming from the Princess of Books and such, that's a pretty nice compliment.
And coming from the Princess of World-Shattering Mistakes?
She shrugged.
Nice enough, I reckon. Leastwise, you can recognize a goof once you're landed in it. There's a heap of ponies you can't.
I should have figured it out when I read that gloss of yours in The Princess,
I said.
Where Machiavelli wrote about losing your influence and inviting anarchy if you're concerned about being good, and that you shouldn't let being good get in the way of your goals, and added a note in the margin that read, "What if one's goal is goodness?"
I looked up at Celestia and grinned apologetically.
I thought it was trite when I read it, but that was a real glimpse at how you've kept the kingdom going all this time, wasn't it?
Celestia shrugged and sipped at the tall drink in the frosty glass that Pinky had given her. Yet there is merit in the question of whether the goal justifies the methods taken to arrive there.
But there's hardly been a time when all the ponies didn't love you for wise leadership, so you must have been doing something right.
The passage of time softens the impacts of mistakes I've made, Twilight, she insisted. I am not a perfect pony.
Asus, I can vouchsafe her words,
Luna said, approaching and lifting one of the little umbrellas out of her sister's drink and tucking it behind one ear. Have you not read of her duel with the vile pony-eating ogre of the hayseed swamp?
Yes,
I said.
That was one of my favorite stories as a filly. I loved the part where she tracked the ogre to his lair and called out, "I shall hammer thy evil from this land!"
Luna chuckled and gave Celestia a look. Celestia rolled her eyes.
What?
No doubt thy book did not mention what transpired thereafter, Luna said with a sly grin. I frowned.
They fought and Celestia won. I understand if the book omitted some details, but...
Luna laughed and said,
The ogre called back to her, "Never yet has a hammer broken an anvil." And then he punched her through a mountain. What?
It took me 2 days to dig myself out, Celestia grumbled. The next time we caught up with him, Luna and I snuck up from behind with poisoned halberds. That did the trick. 'Tis a pity Parliament cannot be dealt with in such a fashion, Luna said wistfully.
Yeah, I was pretty ticked off when I had to miss the spring tour,
Rainbow Dash said.
even if Princess Celestia hadn't wanted us to keep out of sight to avoid confusing and panicking ponies. I couldn't have flown in close formation with those freaking huge wings. I can see why it took you so long to get used to them, Twi. You keep forgetting about your horn too,
Pinkie Pie put in.
Remember that one time that you stuck it clear through a palm tree and the bananas? Yeah.
Dash said quickly, waving her to silence.
I'm just glad I'm back to normal and don't have to be a boring princess or anything. Hey, not all princesses are boring,
I huffed. Rainbow Dash regarded me for a moment and then grinned.
Yeah, maybe. Luna is pretty cool, I guess.
Pinkie Giggle snorted. I threw up my hoofs.
Fine, I'm boring. I guess you won't want to come along on any future adventures then. Hey now!
Dash protested.
Let's not get carried away here. Did you have something in mind? Well...
I thought about all the places in the world I hadn't yet visited, all the people I hadn't met. And beyond that, the nearly infinite variety of worlds that were only next door if a pony knew how to get there. For the first time in a long while, I found myself wearing a smile of unalloyed happiness.
The possibilities are endless,
I said.
Hello and thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, please hit that like button down below, since it really helps me out in the YouTube algorithm. And if you haven't already, why not subscribe to my channel? If you want to support the channel and all the content that I create, you can do so via Patreon at patreon.com/visualpony. The link is in the description. If you want more of my content, why not visit my website where I have everything organized into neat little categories. The address is visualpony.de. Here you can find all the information about upcoming releases and stories that are still in production. And now I'm signing off, my lovely viewers. Visual Pony